and welcome back everyone to Insider Gaming. Mike Strauss, Senior Editor here, once again with another fantastic interview. We spoke to the team last year. It's our first follow-up interview here at IG, and this is around everything Songs of Conquest. I'm here with lead game designer Carl and lead programmer Niklas. Guys, it's launch day, the day we're recording this, but thank you so much for taking the time and joining me.
No problem. Yeah. We're excited to be here. Really fun. And it's actually our game is releasing in like 2.5 hours, a little bit more.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's just nice to do something else instead of because it's done, it's finished. We
prepped pretty good.
Yeah.
So
we don't we're not supposed to have anything to do now 2 hours before.
No, it would have been a warning sign if it had.
Even
right.
If we did before early access, right?
Yeah.
That didn't we just was that right after early access sign pressing button pressing thing? We had that big
Errors.
Yeah.
We had to do some emergency.
Yeah. So
fixes
we're
last time
more
around.
prepared this time than we did for early access.
So, the game, for those that may not be familiar with it or haven't followed it, Songs of Conquest, it's a turn-based strategy. It harkens back to the days of, I've told you guys, now this is like the third time I'm telling you guys, my favorite game of all time, Heroes of Might and Magic 3, specifically 3, but the Heroes franchise and those types of classic fantasy turn-based strategies.
Yeah.
This is a game that has been in early access for a couple years. You guys have been working on it for years. How has the whole thing changed through the process of development?
In many ways, for us, development kind of had 3 stages, you could say. We had our early stage when we sort of made Songs of Conquest 1 in a way, in the way we looked at it, which was in many ways a more complex game, game design wise, mechanics wise, it was pretty complex, and graphics wise, it was a little bit simpler.
It was plain to
cuter, more plain. Yeah. And then we did a major overhaul after 2 years of development, and changed a lot of the game, not just graphic style, but also game style, and started looking at
we realized that we had to do a bit of a turn to get that kind of immediate appeal.
Yeah, exactly. Very much
and then Patrick did a few experiments with the 2.5D billboard approach that we have right now, and all of us were
oh yeah, this is the way the game should look like. So anyway, internally we always often talk about okay, so we made game 1, we just didn't release it, and then we immediately made the second game, which is Songs of Conquest.
Yeah, the first one we called Adventures in Conquest.
Yeah, we did.
I think Songs is a better name. Because one, we'll talk about this. The score of this game, the soundtrack is just. Granted, you need to have a very good music. The score has to be just incredible if you're going to have songs in your name, and luckily, I guess it does. And we'll piggyback on that while it's in my head. How was that process of getting the music to kind of match the environment you were looking for, all the different experiences that happen in the game, all of the fights, all of the characters, all of the factions, town, everything, it's all gotta match and flow. As far as the whole scope of development, how difficult or how big or just that whole process?
You want to start?
Yeah. It was the most difficult thing was to find the right person.
Yeah,
I think, because we went out with a job application and said please, everyone who's a composer, let's send in your demos and stuff like that, so we can have a look at them. And then we found Rainer.
I remember it being a bit of I was fighting for him pretty hard. Because the thing is Rainer Helgesson, who's our main composer. He I really liked him to start, but I have very much of a musical background. I used to work with musical theater and so on. And the stuff he sent in as a composer, as a work, it wasn't good. It wasn't what we needed for the game. So my 3 colleagues, they were yeah, it's like, but this is not what we want the game to sound like. And I'm like, I understand, but no, there's. So then I started like emailing Rainer. I'm like, you need to make something more. And then
Then he sent in a new one. Yeah, he said like this is for Rana.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. He specifically like made it for Rana. Then. Yeah. And then I didn't need to say anything more.
No.
Once you heard it specifically designed for a faction, you're like, no, this is our guy.
Yeah. And
if everything could sound like that, we were like, oh, this is a great soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great soundtrack.
And he's such a great composer. He's really good.
Yeah.
And both me and Niklas has been working like back and forth with him as like sounding board and feedback and so on. Niklas is really good at listening to like certain details in songs and finding things where like, well, if it sounds like this, you might think of a game like this.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, that's a really good point. So it like it's really nice to hear stuff because we've paid a lot of attention to the songs, and a lot of the time like Rainer is very good, but sometimes like one of my most common ones where I'm like, if the song is like this, we pay too much attention to it.
Yeah.
It also needs to be in the background. It needs to be really good,
but not take away the focus.
Background. Yeah. And then like when you get to battle, it can take a little bit more focus. And then like I said, Nick is really good at picking out like, hey, that sound at like 242, that makes you think of magic. Like it doesn't. Maybe it's not magic there. It might be really weird, and you're like, that's a good point because the whole song isn't like that. So it's just like it's been it's really nice to get like praise for the music because Rainer is really good and he does of course the majority of it. But it's also been very much just like back and forth listening,
feedback. And maybe recording a video.
Yeah.
And then putting the drafts.
Yeah, exactly. Like
audio track. And
Yeah, and a lot of the songs has just been like what you say, like, okay, so here are battle songs, and you just like you play them and you play battles.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that I think about. I don't want to sit here. This might be one of the last times I try and bring it up. But Heroes, one, I noticed the box art behind you, and I just keep like fixating on it.
Yeah.
But everybody who's a fan of that game, especially like Heroes 3, they remember the battle music. Like it's ingrained in your head. Non-stop, like on repeat, and it's one of those things of like that's because it's good. And admittedly, in my mind, like I'm at that point with the soundtrack here where it's good to listen to. Like, it's one of those things. There's a few video game soundtracks where I can just sit there and listen to, like Sonic the Hedgehog is one of them, where every game I can just sit and listen to. But this is also turning into one of those games where you can just sit and listen to, like while I'm working, while I'm whatever I'm doing. And it just adds to that. It, like you said, it doesn't take away from the gameplay going on, but it really adds to it to the point where you'll get to it, especially as you play it, at least in my view, you'll be able to easily associate what song goes with what faction, what song goes with what scene, setting, whatever it may be.
Yep. And we have a few actually systems in gameplay code as well that tries to pick the right song depending on what you play. They're not super advanced, but it's like if you are playing Rana, we have a Rana playlist.
Yeah.
And then we have as well in the map editor, we have...
Yeah, like when you're playing the campaign, like we have... Niklas made like some really good tools for that, and then we can actually set up what songs plays where. And
you can pick the specific song on your map just to...
Yeah, which is something players can do as well.
Yes.
When they create their own maps.
So the game's been in early access for a couple years.
Yeah.
And... how has just the feeling of working, because you had the system for players to send feedback and bugs and suggestions, and you are working through what you guys know you need to get done, but then you're also getting all this feedback from players. How is working through this whole thing, like finding that balancing act of, this is just, I don't want to say nonsense, but this is just unrealistic, versus this is okay, they make a good point, we need to like investigate more, like finding that, like how much extra work did that add for you guys? Was that something where now maybe in hindsight you go, it might have been too much at that point? Like was there any, like just that whole situation of getting there with the feedback and what you guys originally wanted?
It's been, I've been very involved with the planning of the project in general. So we've had like different stages of the game where we've had to work very differently. So, but we've always had an agile approach. We work with the product methodology of Scrum. So we have monthly sprints. Usually, we've been working with monthly sprints for a long time. We decide on a goal, and then we work for a month, and then we evaluate like, oh, did something come in from the community? Do we need to change anything? Do we have a mountain of bugs that we need to fix before we do anything else?
Yeah.
And that's, constant reevaluation every month is crucial, I think.
Yeah.
To just
and it also took like a while for us to find like the right way of doing that, because in the beginning I was also like a big part of that.
Yeah.
And that just, in a way, because I do mainly like design and map work and stuff like that, and that just became like a little bit of a weird spot.
Yeah, you were ahead of us.
Yeah, because I was always ahead, and I was just kind of like waiting, and then we're like, let's work towards this, and I'm like, but I'm done with that.
We already did.
Yeah.
So that, but then like I think it was maybe 1 year ago or something, we changed it just a little bit because we work in these months, and then like continuously we fix bugs, and then instead we did like 3 weeks of doing what we wanted to do, and then 1 week of bug fixing, right?
Bug fixing and polish.
Yeah.
In 1 week, because we didn't have enough time to just stabilize the build that we were going to release.
And that was just a very good way of doing things. But just like what you were talking about, just like how do you manage all the feedback you get from the players? Like in the beginning, like when we released, I couldn't, like it was too much. And it was really hard not to just like spend every working hour just reading feedback.
Yeah.
And in at the start, that's a really good thing to do, but then eventually, like I spend like 3 hours a day just reading. It's just like I want to know what everyone's doing, what they're writing, but like this is way too much.
Yeah, then you lose. It's not productive anymore. It gets to the point, and it's
like,
a rabbit hole you fall into.
It's been doing the stuff they're writing about.
Yeah.
So
you have to look at it like little fires.
Yeah.
If we have a Twitter account, we have Discord, and we have Facebook, and we see different users speaking about the same thing, you need to like, oh, there's something.
Yeah.
Let's check how many reports we have. Because we custom built our bug report system as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of people, when there's a problem, we get maybe 100 or 150 reports of the same thing.
Yeah.
So
and then if you can find like a discussion going around that thing, like
that helps open up the priority.
For me, it's like when because I'm looking a lot of like the game balancing and like design, like more like fluffy things where people are like, these good guys are too good or too bad or this or that. It's just like that's always a thing. Or like,
why is my favorite faction not powerful enough? Why?
Yeah, like I can't do this, and then I'm like, I can. What's your problem?
Yeah, get good, duh.
I'm like, get good. No.
Yeah, right.
I was just like many a long night. I'm just someone's writing that. I'm just like sitting there. I'm like I type up a response. I'm like, do this, and then you're like, no, this isn't the solution.
Yeah.
So then it's just like you gotta kind of like look at like when people are giving like suggestions to like fix the game. They're doing it like sometimes out of frustration, but most of the time they're doing it because they do want to help the game. And like to me, looking at those, they can be like three kinds. Like the first one is just like, that's an amazing suggestion. I will do exactly what you're saying. Holy shit! How come I didn't think about that? Those are super, of course.
Yeah.
But they happen. So you shouldn't like brush off stuff like that. Never happens. But sometimes they do. The second one is like the most common one, which is like I see. You're correct. That is a problem. Your solution is not the way to fix it, but what is the problem? And then, like, if you see a lot of people talking about stuff, you can be like, okay, what is the actual problem here? Because you can see them talking about the thing and they're trying to figure out solutions. But most of the time, I mean, not to like discredit our players, but most of the time they might not even know like what the problem is.
Yeah.
They want something else.
Yeah, because they're talking about, most of the time they're talking about a reaction to what the actual problem could be. Like maybe they're talking about like the large dwelling troops are too powerful, and then I'm like, well, that could be the problem, or maybe the problem is that you get the large dwelling too fast.
Yeah.
That is the problem. Or maybe like, it could be a bunch of different things.
Yeah, or waiting times in multiplayer.
Yeah, exactly. Like what are like what is going on?
Yeah.
So that's just like the most common one, and that one just requires a lot more time. And I think that's something that I'm better at now than when we started. I'd be like, okay, I'm noticing people are talking about this. Okay, cool. Do I know exactly what the problem is already? I'm just like, and if I do, that's fine. And if I don't, I'm like, okay, I need to wait. I need to see more people talking about this. I need to see what it is. Before I like jump to conclusions and just create another problem.
So
and then the third one is just like, well, this isn't just applicable to the way we want to make the game. Like a super common one for us is just like, we should have endless stack sizes, and we're like, no, that's like one of our design decisions. Like
from day one, like from the first time I play, like that because that adds strategy to it to me.
Yeah,
it's not like other games where I can just have I just wait until I have over 2,000 skeletons and I just run through and I win.
No,
I don't care if you have. I don't care what you have. I win. Like you lose.
I love that element in Heroes, but I wouldn't love it in our game.
Yeah, it just some things don't work. Yeah.
So you have a lot of suggestions that are just like that, where people like they see something they like in one game, and they're like, why isn't it like that here? It should be like that here, and then you're like, no.
Yeah, and you and I have been talking a lot about target audiences and everything.
Yeah.
So we also have to like, okay, who is asking this in our sheet of target audiences and what they do like and what they want. Like, is this compatible with our vision?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as the one thing with the gameplay too that a lot of people were focused on, and you guys put so much effort into, is AI. Each update in every roadmap, in every quarter, there's been AI improvement after AI improvements. About a year or so ago, you guys released major updates to it. How do you feel with where the game is at? Again, these are kind of weird questions because obviously you feel good about it launching the game in 1.0, but on a grand scale, where AI sits, because that's where a bulk of the player base is going to ultimately be playing.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I've been like, I'm not a programmer, but I've been working with the programmers, the AI programmers, Marcus and Niklas. So I'm very like involved in the AI making, not as much as they are, of course. But, but I think the AI is in a really like solid state now. Otherwise, we wouldn't release, as you say, like we're happy with it. But there are so many things that we would love to do. But in certain ways, it's also like, how good do you want to make it? Like,
yeah. Do you want?
Yeah. Sometimes we get suggestions from players like, the AI should do this because that's like the optimal thing. And then I look at that, I'm like, no, that's not how we want our AI to play, actually. So, but there's a bunch of stuff that I would love for the AI to be able to do. But that goes for like every area of the game, and that's just part of like game development. You can't do all the things.
And again with the target audiences. I mean, we improved the AI, and then we started seeing reviews of the game. It's like, oh, it's too difficult.
Yeah, you don't want. I mean, Age of Empires is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Age of Empires, you put it up to the highest difficulty, and sometimes it's like the AI feels like it's cheating. Yeah, I've always been in that type of mindset, and you guys might agree. It should never feel when it comes to an AI or difficulty spike where it feels like they're doing something that you can't do as a player.
Yeah,
they just do something. They just play the game better. Not they're like, doing something you physically can't do.
Quite a lot of like reports exactly what you're describing. Like, I do this, and then they show up with this, and I'm like, what difficult are you playing at? I'm like, no, like that just can't happen. And the things you describe, that's impossible. It can't happen. It can't do it.
Yeah.
Like unless you've downloaded some weird mod and like hacksaw the code, like it can't. Like the game that we've made, it can't do that. Yeah. But as you say, like the AI is quite competent in certain areas, so it feels like it's cheating. Sometimes, like when you're playing a good player, you're like, how the fuck did you do that?
So the game. Now, last year when I sat down with Anders, we talked about the game's 1.0 release, which is finally happening. There was like some prelim discussion of possibly launching it late last year. What went into holding it off until now? Like, was it just there was things we needed to fine tune? Was there anything major holding you back?
I think it was a number of things, but mainly we had to finish the content of the campaign.
Yeah, it was mainly like we could launch it now. It was a little bit like we wanted to make sure the AI got the amount of time of like
Especially for
game.
new players, the AI
Yeah.
for new players. Like we don't want them to feel like it's too difficult.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
a person who just buys the game and then they get completely owned by
Yeah,
the AI.
because we haven't
not
like
fun.
tuned it for, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
Like when you have early access and you have like dedicated players, they eventually they're really good.
Yeah, most people
Yeah.
that go on our Discord server is pretty good.
Yeah, I would say so. So it was that, and it was also like we looked at that and we were like, well, if we just like take 3 or 4 more months, we can just do these things, and it won't actually hurt us. And so we just made like sort of like the judgment call that I don't think the community will be overly sad that we push.
Yeah, and we can do a vastly better product.
Yeah,
that
yeah, we can take another like complete go at like for me like revamping the campaign, looking over difficulties, making sure like a whole bunch of like AI improvements got in there,
Yeah,
and then also like just letting the game be out, finding more and more of the like the game breaking bugs.
yeah, because that was a big thing. I mean, since we improved the AI, then the campaigns
Yeah,
on easier difficulties became more difficult.
Yeah.
because it's the same. Like we don't have like separate working AIs depending on difficulty. We just give them different advantages really or disadvantages.
Yeah.
But it's the same like AI working. It's just
Yeah, so we had to go into all the campaign map
Yeah.
and like fine tune that.
Yeah.
Like what opponents are meeting? Is it a good
like
everything? And I mean the Arleon campaign.
Yeah.
you did that the first one.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
oh gosh, yeah.
So it was time to also
To
refresh them.
update it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we got new tools as well, you know.
Oh yes,
Every year
yeah.
we
It's just
got new
like
tools to do cooler things.
Yeah.
Speaking of the campaign, so you have the 4. The
Yeah.
Barya campaign is the latest, the last of the big
Yeah.
4. So now you have Arleon, Barya, Rana, and Loth.
Yep.
Which ones? This is which is your favorite? Which ones are you most proud of? Which ones do you enjoy the most? Because obviously everybody has their own opinion on it, and I can't make an opinion until I play the new one. But right now mine's Loth. But
Oh thanks, yeah.
I've always just been a fan of those types of factions in all the games. The story, like it's just anything about undead and just
Yeah.
it's just I enjoy.
Yeah. Oh this one's really hard for me because I wrote all of them, of course.
Well, it should be easy then.
No, that's why it's hard. Because sometimes it's like, okay, which one do I enjoy playing the most? I actually think I enjoy playing the most. I think Barya Campaign I enjoy playing the most, which is the latest one now. But it's really hard to say because it might just be because it's
The latest.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking also Barya because it's the latest one. I
Yeah.
played, but I would also go with either. I think Loth as well. I like the setting.
Yeah.
I'm a very
Yeah,
much mood
that's-
player. I like mood.
Yeah.
I like the music. and I
That's how. Yeah.
like Brother Hiller. And
Yeah.
everything. It's fun.
I think like the most challenging, like feeling like proud of writing is in a way like the Arleon campaign, because writing Cecilia was really like, she's like the headstrong baroness thing, but she's not a nice person.
No, you
And-
think it at the start. You're like, oh, this is it. And then
Exactly,
as
that
it
was
goes
like
on,
the thing, you're
spoiler
like-
alert for those who are just finding the game and haven't played. But,
Yeah. But the
you've
thing
had a
is, like,
couple
she's
years.
evil.
No.
She's just like she's a baroness.
Yeah.
She's like a noble. Like,
Yeah. It's kind of,
that's-
it's at some point they just have these different philosophies and ideologies where it's just
Yeah.
like, that's just how they were brought up. They're
yeah,
not.
exactly. And I think just like reading, that's just like one of my almost favorite pastimes. Reading about like people posting like Cecilia's evil, and then people are like kind of like arguing about it. I'm like, oh, I'm so pleased with that writing
Yes.
because, yep, yeah, she's just like she's just like a young baroness trying to like do what she think works, and she fucks up a bunch of times.
You should take it as a sense of pride too that people are actually reading, because I've seen games come out where the story is mainly in the dialogue. There's no voice acting, there's no cut. Like, it's the dialogue. That's the whole point. And then people review, it's like, there's no depth to this game. There's no story. And it's like, well, what do you mean? There's a whole story. Well, I skipped all the dialogue boxes. Well, there's the story. Like,
That's just like looking at a book and you're like, what's this cover?
Yeah.
That's a bad book.
I do that.
Yeah.
Though I'm personally, I love reading stories. I love stories in games. Books, nah, not for me.
No, not your thing.
I've never. My wife is a massive reader, like huge. My son, my oldest, is getting into it. I'm not a book person. Like, I'll listen to an audiobook every now and then, but
No, we're both bookies.
Yeah,
Like,
I want to read more, but kids and everything. It's time.
yeah, I have. As we're recording this, my third is due in 2 weeks, so I'm like, all right, where's this? I'm nuts. My wife and I, admittedly, are nuts. It was easy when it was one-on-one. You take one. Now we'll have two. Someone's gonna be at a disadvantage at all times. So.
Oh yeah.
So we'll start wrapping this up. There's a couple more points I want to get to.
Yep.
Multiplayer is obviously a big deal. Throughout the early access, there's been a lot of improvements to the game's multiplayer. One of the biggest improvements is netcode in general. Like, when I first started playing it, admittedly, and playing multiplayer, like, there were issues with connecting to other players. There were issues with, if you drop, well, your SOL, start over. Throughout this process, how much has the multiplayer experience improved throughout maybe the last couple of years? And, like, what more is there still that maybe you guys want to get for multiplayer players?
I mean, I could talk for hours. But,
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's. I mean, we started the development and thinking like this is primarily a single player game.
Yeah.
So we're like, we're gonna have this multiplayer game for those who wants to play it, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But we didn't realize how much of a demand it would be for.
No.
So then, right after, we were like, people want simultaneous turns. Let's fix that. And then we started adding some analytics software so we could see how big of a percentage of people were disconnected randomly from the game. And it was way too high. So all of those stability issues and really focusing on, I think the main focus has been like, how can we reduce your waiting times?
Yeah.
And we have done a lot with that because now you can move at the same time.
Yeah.
You don't have to. I mean, you do have to wait if two people are in a battle at the same time. Yeah. But you can at least walk around.
Yeah, you
in
can
the
do
adventure.
things.
So we've done a lot of things to reduce the waiting times. The problem with the battles at the same times is.
So this is something that we like.
Yeah, we want to do it.
Yeah. So as you say, like the net code and everything, like it's working way better.
Yeah.
And we were really taken by surprise by how many people wanted to play it. But and just like as a little like people who play multiplayer think like way higher numbers are playing than like they think it's like 20-30% of the players are multiplayer. You're like, no, it's like 5. But those 5% are very dedicated.
Yep.
And they really want to play it. So those 5% are super important to us.
Yeah, and it has been growing.
Yeah, and that's also like, it's been like 7 or something now, 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Something like that. And then like our number one thing that we would love to fix is of course like being able to do sim battles somehow. Yeah. So that you can do, because that's the number one thing holding up time right now. If someone's doing a battle, no one else can do a battle at the same time.
Yeah.
The problem is that's a big code change. I mean, we did the code base thinking like, there's just going to be one battle running at a time.
Yeah, and then as soon as you get to simultaneous turns, then that goes out the window. If that wasn't a thing, obviously, then that's no issue. But as soon as you go to that.
That's also the thing, like when you get like a suggestion or a want from players, like sometimes it's easier than they think. It's just like, 5 minutes, no problem. And they're like, wow, I thought that would be 2 weeks. And then sometimes they think like, why can't we do this? That should be super easy. And we're like, that means rewriting everything.
Yeah, it's
just
fun.
like-
The life of software development is hilarious in an ironic sort of way.
Yeah.
Because like there's been times like even like my personal example, it's like, oh, we just have to changing how a button functioned. I've seen break something like that has no method, no rhyme or reason why it should break it, but it broke it. And I'm just like, this is, and then it turns into like a 2-week process or 3-week process to fix. You're just like, it'd just be easier to just go back and revert the button.
The last few months we've been like, okay, not so many new features. Let's at least bring it up and talk about it before you add anything.
Yeah.
Especially the last 2 weeks. It's like,
Oh yeah.
don't do anything
No.
that might break the game.
No.
So the Barya campaign, this, and then we'll wrap things up. The Barya campaign, what was there a reason why this was the last campaign of the Prime 4? Or why? Why was this saved for last?
Well, they are kind of like lined in the order we think people should play. You don't have to play it in that order. So, Barya Campaign has a bunch of like small story reveals, pretty much, just like why did this happen, why did that happen, and playing through Barya Campaign, you'll find out. But another way would be to play that first, and then you know why stuff happens, and you'll just know more than the characters you're playing, which is also fun. But that is one of the big reasons, like why was that last. But another thing is like when we actually like released the game in early access, we've looked at a lot of other like adventure strategy games like Heroes or Age of Wonders, and we looked at how much are the campaigns played, and they're like barely played.
Yeah.
Barely. It's just like, I think it was like a 1% or something play all the campaign. Like was so low. It was super
some games.
Yeah, just like the drop off from the like a lot of people play like 1 or 2 maps, but then like out of the 38 or whatever, it's just like it like crazy drop off. So we looked at that and we're like, I don't think we should spend a huge amount of time making 4 campaigns. Maybe we'll just make 2 campaigns and trying to introduce as much as we can of the game and the lore and the characters using those 2 campaigns, and that'll be good. So basically, like Arleon campaign and Rana campaign, they are like the Arleon and the Rana campaign, but they're also trying to draw in as many elements as they can.
Yeah.
From the other ones, just to try and introduce those factions as much as they can, and then like I think it was just like not even a week after early access, we were like, oh, okay, we're making 2 more campaigns, right?
Because people were like the interest was just there.
It was just like completely different from other numbers that we've seen, which is amazing for us.
Yeah, the campaigns are by far the most popular.
Oh,
game.
by far.
Yeah.
So
I think it's like 60%.
Yeah, it's just it's super high. And then it all of a sudden then it was more like when we decided to do Arleon or Rana as the 2 main campaigns, so to speak, it was just like, well, we should do Arleon because that's just like they're the human perspective, and we like the Fae conflict there, and we're like, okay, let's do those. And they were like, yeah, and Rana, they're the most specific faction for our game, so then we went with them as the second one. And then when we were talking like, okay, so Loth or Barya, in what order should we? And we already had like the whole story of the world that we wanted to do, and then we're like, okay, so yeah, it makes more sense for people playing through early access to first play Loth campaign, and then they can kind of talk and discuss lore and whatever, and then they'll get Barya campaign. It'll be like a nice little end to the whole thing.
So it's safe to say that because of the success and the player base of the campaign, you're right back to work writing more, right? And if not, I'm going to make you. Like that, there's going to be more, right?
Anything, but that does seem like that.
I mean, you guys have been teasing in the roadmap, and it's been teasing. Oh, we have more still secret announcements.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Now that I think we're still secret for like 2 more hours. Yeah. No, but I mean, we can say as much. There will be more stories and campaign like things.
Maybe you can and can't say this. Will they link to the first 4, or will they be entirely new?
They will play within like the same canon and same
story.
Yeah. They will absolutely. We want like, we have like a couple of challenge maps and stuff out like that, and they still in a way like work for the canon, but they don't really like tell that much story. But yeah, absolutely. If when we release like additional campaigns and story, they will like. Yeah, we're very like focused on keeping our story and our world like
consistent.
Yeah. So they will. So because I mean I don't want to spoil Barya, but all the other 3 campaigns kind of just like leads up to it now.
The climax type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have like a big ending to everything because.
The plan is to keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. And hopefully, and you know, by the looks of it, with the release and everything, the game will be popular enough for us to be able to tell all the stories we want to tell within the.
Is there anything that maybe people on the fence of should they dive into this game you want them to know as we wrap up here?
Oh.
If you could pick one or two things, don't go. I know you can go off. I could tell you. There's like, well, you got to do this. But if you have to, we have to elevator pitch this.
Okay. Do you want to go?
Thinking of trying to condense it into.
I mean, that's a sign of a really deep game, though. If you can't,
I think like if you want to play a turn-based game. Where you can immerse yourself in the atmosphere, or you could min-max the shit out of it if that's your play style. Then that's it. This is your game.
Yeah, and something that's not. I mean, you want a unique experience.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking for Heroes of Might and Magic 3, you can go play Heroes of Might and Magic.
It's a great game.
Because it's very good.
We got it right there.
I still play it. I use the mod community is incredible.
Yeah, we do. It's great. Yeah. It's a great game.
It's a great game.
But if you like the genre of Heroes, and if you like the genre of Age of Wonders, and you've been looking for another game within that genre, that we like to call it like adventure strategy genre, then like try our game. It's great. And if you haven't, like maybe you'll love turn-based games after you try ours. Maybe you never tried it. I think ours would be a really good turn-based first game.
Yeah, and we worked a lot with the world, the mood, with the music and everything. So we want you to like be immersed in the world as soon as you press play. So I think we've actually succeeded with that. Yeah.
That's a lot of words for a 3-line pitch, but you know.
Perfect. If it convinces more people to play the game, right?
Yeah.
Carl and Niklas, I want to thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I have been following this game for years, and it makes me happy. Like, this is my favorite type of game. Like, it is the game, like, on the Insider Gaming website, my bio is, I play turn-based strategy. Like, that's just what I do. Those are my top games. Like, I will always play those types of games. If you want to know more about Songs of Conquest, you can find it on Twitter at Songs of Conquest. Songsofconquest.com, Steam, like, they have Discord. Everything is at songsofconquest.com.
Yeah.
It is out now. After this releases, it is out now, version 1.0 full release. Yeah. Guys, congratulations on it, and thank you again.
Thank you.